Welcome to Taisho, Tokyo, a city on the brink.
The imperial Japanese capital 1 year before the Great Kanto earthquake. In the year 1922, Tokyo had become one of the most fascinating cities in the world. A metropolis of nearly 4 million inhabitants, where the ancient and the modern coexisted in ways no other capital could match. Electric streetcars ran alongside rickshaws pulled by men. Buddhist temples from the 7th century rose in the shadow of Japan's first skyscraper, and geishas in traditional kimonos walked the same streets as the so-called modern girls with Western dresses and fashionably bobbed hair. In little more than a year, this city would be devastated by one of the most catastrophic earthquakes in modern history, followed by fires that would create fire tornadoes and leave more than 100,000 dead. In this video, I use modern artificial intelligence tools to bring historic photographs, engravings, and period maps to life, shifting perspectives, moving camera angles, and traveling through these scenes in ways their original creators never could have imagined. The goal is not just to look at the past, but to step into it, to walk through Tokyo as it once was, and try to imagine what it must have been like to stand here at the height of the Taisho era, when Japan looked toward the future without knowing that the ground beneath its feet was about to collapse. And if you stick around until the end, we'll compare these same locations to how they look today, to see what time has changed and what still remains. Before we step into the streets of Tokyo, it helps to understand how this story began. The Taisho era, which extended from 1912 to 1926, represented a period of profound transformation for Japan. After decades of aggressive modernization during the Meiji era, the country had achieved the unthinkable. Becoming the first non-Western power in the modern world, it had defeated China and Russia in wars, had been accepted among the great powers in the League of Nations, and was now experimenting with something new: democracy. They called it Taisho democracy, a brief flowering of political freedom, labor movements, and cultural expression that would be crushed in the following decades by the militarism that would lead Japan into World War II. But in 1922, all of that was still to come. It was a moment of optimism, of cafes filled with intellectuals debating Western ideas, of cinemas showing silent films with live narrators, of young people defying the traditions of their parents. This image shows Tokyo seen from the harbor in the early 1920s. The city spread across a plain, crossed by rivers and canals, with the imperial palace at its heart, protected by ancient moats. From here, one could see how old Edo had transformed into modern Tokyo, though the change was uneven. Entire neighborhoods of 1- or 2-story wooden houses crowded along narrow streets, while Western-style red brick buildings rose in the commercial districts. The city had grown so rapidly that its infrastructure could barely sustain it. Rents had skyrocketed more than 200% between 1914 and 1922, and most workers lived in cramped, rented apartments vulnerable to fire. This is Tokyo Station, the red brick building that had become the gateway to the capital. Opened in 1914, it was designed by Kingo Tatsuno in Victorian Renaissance style, with elegant domes at its north and south ends. At more than 300 meters long, it was a statement of intent. Japan could build like the Europeans, but in its own way. The station connected Tokyo with the rest of the country through an expanding rail network, and its front plaza opened toward the Marunouchi financial district, where Western-style buildings housed banks and corporations. Knowing what we know now, it's strange to think how ordinary this place must have felt at the time, with no sense that it would survive the earthquake that would destroy much of the city around it. This scene shows the Ginza district, the commercial heart of Tokyo, and the showcase of Japanese modernization. After a devastating fire in 1872, Ginza had been rebuilt with Western-style brick buildings, earning the nickname Bricktown. electric streetcars had traveled the main avenue since 1904, passing by department stores like Mitsukoshi, which had opened branches here following the model of American department stores. Glass display windows exhibited Western clothing, accessories, and the latest imported novelties. At night, electric lights illuminated the streets, extending urban life beyond sunset. Willow trees lined the sidewalks, and among the pedestrians mingled men in Western suits and hats, alongside women in traditional kimonos. The so-called Mobo and Moga, modern boys and modern girls, strolled through Ginza, displaying their defiance of traditional customs. The men in suits, felt hats and walking sticks, the women in short dresses, bobbed hair and lipstick. Cafes proliferated, with some 600 establishments in Ginza alone, according to police surveys of the era, where Western coffee and alcohol were served while jazz records played. This is the Ryunkaku Tower, Japan's first skyscraper, which dominated the skyline of the Asakusa district. Popularly known as Junikai, or the 12-story tower, it was designed by Scottish engineer William Burton and completed in 1890. At nearly 70 meters tall, it was the tallest building in Tokyo, visible from almost any point in the city. Its octagonal red brick structure over a wooden frame housed shops selling products from around the world, exhibition spaces, and an observation platform from which visitors could contemplate the capital stretching to the horizon. Here operated Japan's first electric elevator, though it was shut down for safety reasons after only half a year of operation. The tower had become the symbol of Asakusa, Tokyo's most popular entertainment district, a place where theaters, cinemas, restaurants, and clandestine brothels attracted crowds from all social classes. An earthquake in 1894 had damaged the structure, which was reinforced with steel beams, but nothing would prepare it for what was coming in 1923. This image shows Sensoji Temple in Asakusa, the oldest temple in Tokyo, whose history dated back to the year 628. According to legend, two fishermen found a golden statue of Kannon, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, in their nets while fishing in the Sumida River, and the temple was built to enshrine it. For centuries, Sensoji had been the spiritual heart of the city, and its grounds attracted pilgrims from all over Japan. The Kaminarimon Gate, with its enormous red lantern and statues of the gods of wind and thunder guarding the entrance, marked the beginning of Nakamai's, one of the oldest shopping streets in the country, where shops that had been operated by the same families for generations sold traditional sweets, souvenirs, and religious items. The temple had survived earthquakes and fires over the centuries, being rebuilt again and again. In 1922, the main buildings dated from the 17th century, when the shogun Tokugawa Iemitsu had sponsored their reconstruction. This photograph shows a typical street in the Asakusa district, the center of popular entertainment in Tokyo. Kabuki theaters shared space with movie theaters where silent films were narrated live by benshi, professional narrators whose voices brought the moving images to life. Breweries, tea houses, and restaurants served crowds who came from across the city seeking amusement. The Hanayashiki amusement park, considered the oldest in Japan, had originally opened in 1853 as a flower garden before transforming into an attraction space. In this dense and vibrant neighborhood, life pulsed with an energy that contrasted with the formality of governmental and financial Tokyo. This was where ordinary people came to escape, to laugh, to forget for a few hours the pressures of accelerated modernization. This is the Imperial Hotel, one of the most ambitious works by American architect Frank Lloyd Wright. The hotel had been under construction since 1915, a project plagued by delays, cost overruns, and conflicts that had exhausted the patience of its Japanese patrons. By 1922, the north wing and a partially completed central section had opened to the public, offering luxury accommodations to international visitors and the Japanese elite. Wright had designed the building in Mayan revival style, with volcanic Oya stone carved in geometric patterns, low ceilings, and reflecting pools in the inner courtyard. But most important was what couldn't be seen: a floating foundation of concrete piles designed to resist earthquakes. Wright had insisted on this structural innovation, and his genius would be vindicated in dramatic fashion. The hotel was scheduled for its official opening on September 1st, 1923, the same day the earthquake would devastate Tokyo. This scene shows the Sumida River, the waterway artery that crossed through eastern Tokyo. For centuries, the river had been fundamental for transporting goods and people, and its banks were filled with warehouses, docks, and fishing neighborhoods. Wooden barges transported rice, sake, coal, and all kinds of products, while bridges connected the neighborhoods on both banks. In summer, the river transformed into a stage for fireworks festivals whose tradition dated back to 1733. Yakitabune boats, traditional pleasure vessels, sailed the waters while their passengers dined, drank, and contemplated the fireworks illuminating the night sky. In 1922, new steel and concrete bridges were beginning to replace the older wooden structures, symbols of progress that were also transforming the river margins into industrial zones. When the earthquake came, many would flee toward the river seeking refuge, not knowing that sparks and burning debris would fall from the sky onto the crowded boats. This image shows the Imperial Palace, the symbolic heart of Tokyo and residence of Emperor Taisho, built on the former site of Edo Castle, from where the Tokugawa shoguns had ruled Japan for more than 250 years. The palace was surrounded by moats and gardens that separated it from the bustle of the city. The Nijubashi Bridge, with its elegant double arches, marked the ceremonial entrance to the inner grounds, though these remained closed to the public, except on special occasions. Emperor Taisho, whose health had severely declined, had delegated many of his ceremonial functions to Crown Prince Hirohito, who was assuming increasing responsibilities. The wide, open grounds in front of the palace would serve as refuge during the earthquake, when tens of thousands of people would flee here, seeking a space free of buildings that could collapse. This photograph captures an everyday scene in a residential neighborhood of Tokyo. 1- or 2-story wooden houses lined narrow streets, with paper sliding doors and tile roofs. In tiny gardens, housewives hung clothes to dry, while children played in the alleyways. Kitchens used coal stoves and open braziers to prepare meals, a practice that would prove fatal when the earthquake struck just before noon, when thousands of families were cooking lunch. The fires that broke out simultaneously throughout the city merged into massive conflagrations that firefighters couldn't contain because the water pipes had broken. In these dense neighborhoods built almost entirely of flammable materials, the flames spread with terrifying speed. This scene shows the Nihonbashi district, the historic commercial heart of Tokyo. The bridge that gave the neighborhood its name had been declared the 0 point of Japan's national highways since the Edo period, and remained the symbolic center of the city. The Mitsukoshi department stores had established their main headquarters here, transforming from a traditional kimono shop founded in 1673 into Japan's first modern department store. Banks, trading houses, and corporate offices lined the streets, reflecting the rapid economic growth that had turned Japan into an industrial power. 121 of the 138 central bank offices in Tokyo would be consumed by fire after the earthquake, along with 222 of the 310 branch offices. This image shows the Kabukiza Theater in the Ginza district, the main stage for traditional Japanese dramatic art. The theater had been rebuilt in 1921 after a fire, with a facade that combined traditional Japanese architectural elements with modern structure. Within its walls, Actors who had inherited their roles from previous generations performed historical dramas and stylized dances for audiences that included both traditional enthusiasts and modern curiosity seekers. Kabuki represented cultural continuity amid accelerated transformation, an art that had survived centuries of changes and would survive the impending disaster as well. Though the building itself would have to be rebuilt after the earthquake, this photograph captures life in the streets of Tokyo, where rickshaws shared space with electric streetcars and the first automobiles. Rickshaw drivers, with their muscular legs and conical straw hats, remained a common presence, though their numbers were declining against competition from motorized transport. By 1922, Tokyo's streetcar network had expanded to more than 170 kilometers of track, connecting the city's main districts. The wooden cars, painted different colors according to the operating company, could carry up to 40 passengers, 16 seated and the rest standing, gripping poles while the vehicles swayed through the streets. Service began at 6 in the morning and continued until 1 in the morning, with workers stationed at each stop to help control the crowds. Now I want to bring you into the present and show you how these places look today. Thanks for being here. If you have thoughts or suggestions for future cities, share them in the comments. Tokyo Station survived the 1923 earthquake with relatively minor damage, though it lost its third floor during the World War II bombings. It was restored to its original state in 2012 and today remains Japan's main rail hub, connecting the capital with the rest of the country via bullet train lines. Its red bricks contrast with the glass skyscrapers that now dominate the Marunouchi district. The Ginza district was almost completely destroyed by the fires following the earthquake, but was rebuilt with greater grandeur than before. Department stores like Mitsukoshi, Matsuzakaya, and Matsuya built modern buildings that transformed the avenue into a showcase of Japanese luxury. The Wako building, with its iconic clock tower, still dominates the Ginza 4 intersection, though it was rebuilt after suffering damage in World War II. The Ryunkaku Tower did not survive. The 1923 earthquake collapsed the upper floors, leaving a dangerously unstable structure that had to be demolished with explosives. For 33 years, it had been the symbol of Asakusa and all of Tokyo. Its destruction marked the end of an era. Today, a supermarket occupies the land where it once stood, with a historic marker near its entrance. In 2018, a nearby construction project unearthed the bricks of the original foundation. Sensoji Temple was completely destroyed by the firebombing of March 1945, having survived the 1923 earthquake. It was rebuilt in the 1950s as a symbol of Tokyo's rebirth, and the Kaminarimon Gate was restored in 1960 thanks to a donation from the founder of Panasonic. Today, it receives more than 30 million visitors per year, making it the most visited religious site in the world. Frank Lloyd Wright's Imperial Hotel proved its seismic resistance by surviving the 1923 earthquake with minor damage, while much of Tokyo burned around it. A famous telegram from Baron Okura proclaimed, "Hotel stands undamaged as monument to your genius." However, the building was demolished in 1968 to make way for a modern hotel. The entrance lobby was preserved and reconstructed at the Meiji Mura Museum near Nagoya. The Sumida River continues to flow through eastern Tokyo, though its surroundings have changed dramatically. Elevated highways cross over its waters, and skyscrapers rise where wooden warehouses once stood. The Tokyo Skytree, Japan's tallest tower at 634 meters, now dominates the skyline that once belonged to the Ryunkaku Tower. However, traditions persist. Fireworks festivals continue every summer, and the cherry blossoms of Sumida Park attract crowds every spring. The Imperial Palace remains in its original location, surrounded by the same moats and gardens that protected it a century ago. Although the main buildings were destroyed during the 1945 bombings, The palace was rebuilt and remains the official residence of the Japanese imperial family. The plaza in front of the palace, which served as refuge for tens of thousands during the earthquake, is now a public space where visitors can contemplate the Nijubashi Bridge and reflect on the continuity of this millennial institution. Knowing what we know now, it's strange to think how ordinary everything must have felt in 1922. People went to work, children went to school, families prepared lunch with no sense that in little more than a year, at 11:58 in the morning on September 1st, 1923, the ground would begin to shake for 14 terrifying seconds. The magnitude 7.9 earthquake was followed by aftershocks, tsunamis, and, most devastatingly, by fires that merged into firestorms, reaching temperatures of hundreds of degrees. At the old Army clothing depot in the Honjo district, where nearly 44,000 refugees had gathered seeking safety in an open space, a phenomenon called the Dragon Twist would immolate them in minutes. A fire whirl fed by winds from the typhoon that had passed the day before. In the end, more than 100,000 people lost their lives, 300,000 homes were destroyed, and an entire city had to be rebuilt from the ashes. Imagine being there in 1922, walking through the streets of Ginza under electric lights, hearing the clatter of streetcars, feeling the energy of a city that looked toward the future with optimism. No one could know that this city, with its unique blend of tradition and modernity, was living its final months. In a sense, if I could visit this place with what I know today, I think I would see it as one of those hinge moments in history, when one world is about to end and another is about to be born, though no one knows it yet. I do really appreciate you watching. Your ideas, input, and constructive feedback really do shape what comes next. Feel free to leave a comment below. Until next time.